Storytime about why I beat up my best friend. So a little background information. Her and I had been best friends since we were in 7th grade. Her family was rich, mine was poor, and at first she was a really good friend. She was always there for me whenever I needed her, until our freshman year of high school, which is when her and I started hanging out with boys. Now, my mom was kind of strict. She wouldn't really let me hang out with boys, but her mom was more lenient about her hanging out with boys. Every weekend, she would throw a party at her house, and she would throw them in her attic because 1, it was huge, and 2, her parents didn't give a fuck what she did up there. Anyways, she would always offer to do my hair and makeup before the party started, which always made me really excited because I never really put any work into my physical appearance. Well, little did I know, the only reason why she would offer to do my hair and makeup at these parties was so that way she could make me look like shit in front of all the boys. So after that, I taught myself how to do my own makeup and do my own hair, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I beat up my best friend. So like I said, I learned how to do my hair and makeup, and she went on vacation for like a month straight. Well, when she came home, she threw another party, and she was like, don't worry, after I'm done getting ready, I'll do your makeup and do your hair. And I was like, no, it's fine, I got it. She literally looks at me and she goes, are you sure? You don't really know how to do that. Like, it'll probably look really bad. And I'm like, why the fuck would you say that? She goes, no, like, I don't mean it to be rude. It's just that, like, I want you to look good in front of the boys and stuff like that. Like, sis tried to talk me into getting a shower for a full, like, 20 minutes. So after that, the whole night, she's literally being a pick-me girl. She's making all these comments about me in front of the boys, and I just keep brushing them off until her next party. We got ready, and I put on these expensive shoes that I had just bought, and she goes, wow, you just like really like to copy my style, don't you? So she starts making comments that whole night about how my family's poor and stuff like that, and she threw up all over my shoes. So I dumped the trash can that everybody had threw up in that night on her, punched her in the face, but like 2 months later, she came to my house and apologized.
Am I wrong for sending the police to my stepsister's wedding? I, 32 female, lost my mom when I was 23. It was by far the most traumatic loss I experienced. It was unfair, untimely, and preventable. I got in therapy and was doing better, but I had issues with my dad's new wife and her daughter, who's 25 and just got married weeks ago. We do not have a close relationship, but we were cordial enough to sit at dinner tables. My stepsister treats me as a relative and was as much distant from me. But after my father got sick, we had to see each other a lot. I'm handling his care while stepmom works full-time, and stepsister doesn't do much, though she's always visiting when I moved in to help my dad. I brought with me all of my mom's belongings, and my stepsister showed interest in my mom's necklace and asked if she could borrow it to wear it at her wedding. I refused, and she tried every method to convince me, and I had to put it in a place where I thought it'd be safe after my stepmother got involved. As the wedding approached, they both kept convincing me to let my stepsister have it. She bragged about affording a better one, but it was a matter of showing who's in control. I stood my ground and told them how serious I was, so they backed off. I didn't attend the wedding to stay with my dad. I remember wanting to change where I was hiding the necklace while the house was empty, but I found it was gone. After searching for hours, I called my stepmom, and she said not to worry, my stepsister took it and will return it when the wedding is over, but it was clear that I won't see it till after the honeymoon since she and her daughter was staying at the hotel. I screamed at her to return it, but she argued about not wanting to leave the guests and the wedding already started. I told her I'd get it myself, but she forbid me from coming, saying she'd have to keep me out from wanting to make a scene. I called the police and explained to them what was happening. I informed them my stepsister intended to leave for her honeymoon with my property. The police were sent to where the wedding was being held, and they were able to retrieve the necklace from my stepsister. My stepmom returned home and kept shouting at me, calling me petty and crazy, to send the police to my stepsister's wedding, ruining it and humiliating them over a piece of jewelry. She was screaming at my sick dad, telling him to handle me after the stunt that I pulled at the wedding. I defended myself, saying I only wanted an item that belonged to me that they took without my permission returned. She argued further that I could have waited to get it back, but I chose to burn the bridge with my stepsister and said that she considers me dead after this. She said stuff I can't mention, but here's all I can say: it was a bad night. I might have overreacted by getting the police involved, but I had no guarantee of getting the necklace back since I have experience with them in the past. So, was I wrong here? It's simple. If you don't want to get the police involved, you don't steal people's property. So no, you're not wrong.
Storytime about how I got my ex-boyfriend back for cheating on me. So a lot of background information. My ex and I were together for almost 2 years, and throughout our whole entire relationship, he had been cheating on me. I'm not surprised though. But what I am surprised about is that he was cheating on me with my best friend. Well, my ex-best friend now. Before my ex and I got together, my best friend had a crush on him for like a week, right? And then she got a boyfriend. And I had asked her, is it okay if I get with him? Like, him and I have been talking. He said that he really likes me. And she said, yeah, of course, that's perfectly fine. I don't care. I don't like him anymore. So I was like, okay, we're all good to go. So a month later, him and I start dating. Well, I found out that he was cheating on me when I went through his phone and saw all these nude pictures of my best friends and videos of them doing the nasty. So I decided I had to get him back. And my best friend, of course. My best friend was still with her boyfriend, but her boyfriend was my ex-boyfriend's best friend. Like for part 2.
Part 2 about how I got my ex-boyfriend back for cheating on me. So I'm just gonna throw this in here real quick. I'm pretty sure the only reason why my best friend did all that stuff with my ex was because she was pissed off at me for actually dating him. Because from what I had heard through other people who knew that she was doing that with my boyfriend, they said that she didn't talk to him or anything anymore. And that she really actually loved her boyfriend that she was with. Little TMI. Throughout my boyfriend and I's whole relationship, he would beg me to be open-minded while being intimate. And he would want to do things that I really just did not want to do. And there was a long list of things that he wanted me to do. So a week later, I told her boyfriend, but I told her boyfriend not to tell her because of my plan. And that whole week, my boyfriend was apologizing to me, saying he was so sorry and that he wants me back, blah, 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 blah. And my best friend thought that her boyfriend was loyal as fuck. Not anymore. So I told him about my plan, which was to do everything that my boyfriend begged me to do during our whole relationship with him. And for him, it would just be enough to send it to her because she thought he was loyal. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how I got my ex-boyfriend back for cheating on me. So like I said, I told her boyfriend my plan and everything like that, and he was on board right away. So he came over to my house, we did all that good shit. Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys. My ex-best friend had begged me not to tell her boyfriend. She was like, you don't get it, like I really love him, like I really don't want to lose him. And I told her that I wouldn't tell him. But I don't really know what her boyfriend did. All I know is that I sent the video to my boyfriend. Oh, and also my boyfriend begged me not to tell her boyfriend because they were best friends. But I did it anyways, and like I said, I sent it to him, and I sent him a long paragraph. And then he sent me, oh, how could you do this to me, blah, blah, blah. You just ruined everything for me. Things will never be the same between us. And I was like, yeah, okay, good. I don't care. You were a piece of garbage anyways. But however, my ex-best friend, she took her boyfriend back, and now their relationship is toxic as fuck, and he cheats on her all the time. And they've been together now for like 3 years. Karma is a bitch.
Story time about how my best friend's dad tried to assault me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I'm now 24, but 10 years ago, a new girl moved into our town. Her and I quickly became best friends in school. She would always come over to my house and have dinner with me and my parents. My parents really grew to love her because she was so polite and really cared about me. The only thing was that she never wanted me to go over to her house. At first I thought it might be because she was embarrassed of her house or something. And eventually I asked her, and she told me that her dad was abusive towards her mom, and that was the reason why she didn't want me to come over. I felt terrible that she had to live like that, so I expressed to my mom that I was really concerned about her. So my mom actually asked my best friend if she wanted to come live with us for a little bit. Let's call my best friend Sarah. Sarah said no because she wanted to be with her mom. But my mom really wanted to help Sarah and her mom. My mom was in an abusive relationship herself when she was younger, so she understood what Sarah and her mom were going through. My mom decided to invite Sarah's mom over for dinner. That's when my mom asked her about their living situation, and Sarah's mom confessed that it was pretty bad. My mom suggested that she should try to get a divorce, and a few weeks later, she filed for divorce. We were all so happy because this meant things would get better for Sarah and her mom. And things did get better. Her dad moved out to his own apartment, and a few weeks later, he had a new girlfriend. I was able to stay over at Sarah's house, and it was really fun. One of the times that I was with Sarah at her house, her dad showed up. But he started making me feel really uncomfortable. He told Sarah that I was the prettiest friend she'd ever had. I could see him staring at me. After he left, Sarah apologized. I went home and tried not to think about it. A few days later, I was walking home when Sarah's dad pulled up next to me. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my best friend's dad tried to assault me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. One day that I was at Sarah's house, I decided to walk home instead of calling my mom to pick me up. As I was walking home, Sarah's dad pulls up next to me. At this point, I still hadn't forgotten what he had said about me, and I still felt really uncomfortable. He asked me if I needed a ride, and I politely said no. Then he started to laugh and asked me if I was scared of him. Of course I said no, but the truth is that I was. And he said, well, then get in the car if you're not scared of me. And I did. As we got closer to my house, he put his hand on my lap. He asked me if I had a boyfriend, and I pushed his hand away. Then he asked me why I was being so rude. I told him that he made me feel uncomfortable, that I just wanted to get out of the car and walk the rest of the way home. He said no because it would be dangerous for me to be by myself walking at night. He put his hand back on my lap and told me that I was really sturdy. That's when he grabbed my hand and tried to put it on his lap. Of course, I pulled my hand away really quick. Then he pulled over really fast and tried to kiss me. I was so beyond disgusted. I just started yelling, and this really took him by surprise because he must have thought that I was just gonna let him. While I was yelling at the top of my lungs, I managed to unlock the car and open the door. I basically threw myself on the ground, and he started yelling at me, telling me to shut up. He tried to pull me back into the car, but at this point I was laying on the ground, so he had to pick up dead weight. He grabbed my foot and started pulling me back towards the car, but I started kicking him. He told me that I was overreacting and that he was just trying to be friendly. Luckily, a few of the neighbors heard me screaming because I was right in front of their house. They came outside and ran towards me because they saw me struggling with him. That's when the woman said that she was gonna call the cops. He tried to tell the lady that I was overreacting and that he had only leaned over to put the seatbelt on, but I took it the wrong way. I told her that he tried to kiss me and she started calling the cops. That's when he drove away. I literally could not believe what had just happened. Finally, the cops arrived and so did my mom. I told him everything that happened, and I even told him that he had made a comment about me in Sarah's house a few days before that. They quickly started looking for his car and found him at a parking lot. They arrested him and he spent 2 nights in jail. His girlfriend then went to bail him out. She told the cops that he was with her and that I was just lying and that I made everything up. She even went as far as to tell the police that I had been hitting on him and that she had been a witness to it. She would even call my house at 2 in the morning and hang up. I even saw her car near my house and by my school, which means she was following me. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my best friend's dad tried to assault me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I called the police to tell him that his girlfriend was following me. That's when the cops said that I could probably get a restraining order against him and his girlfriend. Sarah and her mom came over to our house after they heard what happened. Of course, they felt really bad, but they weren't surprised. Sarah told me that that's why she never wanted me to come over because her dad had commented things about her friends before. Worst of all is that they couldn't keep him in jail for what he did to me, but a few months later he was finally put into prison because of something else he did. Apparently he had tried to steal a car or something. Remember the crazy girlfriend I told you Sarah's dad had? She kept following me for a long time. She would even show up to my school asking me if I wanted a ride home. Eventually I was able to get a restraining order against her, but she was really scary. A few years ago she tried to follow me on Instagram. I had to block and report her. I mean, what kind of woman would fight for a man like that? The good news is Sarah and I are still good friends to this day. We even went to college together and now have steady boyfriends. Even Sarah's mom remarried and she's really happy with her husband. I look back at what happened as a learning experience, but to be honest, if he ever gets out of prison, I'm scared. Shout out to my follower Remy for always supporting me and watching my lives. If you want a shout out, watch my lives to get picked. Here's a story time about when my coworker pulled out a knife on me. It sounds so dramatic, but it's true. Back in 2010, I got hired as a waitress at a hookah lounge in Glendale, California. I was trained by the lead server. I'm gonna call her Leslie. Leslie was really cool at first, and we got along pretty well. She was also an aspiring model like me, but the difference was that I had already gotten some modeling work and I had representation, and so she would ask me about how to get an agent and I would give her as much information as I could. I was very happy to help her. Our main job was to upsell hookahs, and the bosses noticed that I was pretty good at it, so within a few weeks they were congratulating me and being very vocal about how happy they were that I was working there. I could tell that this made Leslie a little bit jealous, and she quickly became very cold towards me. Whenever I entered a room, she would start talking bad about me on purpose so that I could hear her talking bad about me, and because I wouldn't react the way she wanted to, she would get very upset. She began to poison the servers against me and even the cooks in the kitchen. I then got a raise and the bosses told me in front of her, and this made her even more upset. She clearly had some issues and I felt bad for her, but it didn't give her the right to treat me like that. This is where it gets scary. Come back for part 2. Part 2. My coworker, who I'm calling Leslie, was very envious of the fact that I was doing well at the job and that the bosses were happy with me. I had also gotten a raise and I was making as much money as she was, and she had been there for a very long time. She would talk bad about me as soon as I came into the room, and she would make sure I would hear her, and it got so bad that I would ask her a question and she would flat out ignore me, pretend like I just wasn't even there. I couldn't work like that any longer, so I went up to the bosses and I told them what was happening, and they were not surprised. They basically said, "It's okay, don't worry about it, just ignore her, she'll get over it." And they told me that they were going to talk to her. They told me not to worry, and I went home. The following morning, I wake up early and I go to the hookah lounge because I had the opening shift. As soon as I pull up to the hookah lounge, I see her car parked, and it was the only one there, which told me I was going to be by myself with her. I walk in and I see that she's sitting at a table with one of the other guy servers who's completely in love with her and will do anything she wants. They see me come in and they start walking very fast toward me. She starts yelling that I have cellulite, that I have back knee, that I'm too short, that I'll never make it as an actress. Come back for part 3, it gets scary. Part 3. My coworker Leslie is yelling at me, telling me I have cellulite, I have back knee, that I'm short, that I'll never make it as an actress or a model, and the guy that's standing right next to her is our coworker, and he's totally in love with her and will do anything she wants. He chimes in every now and then and starts calling me a bitch and other names. She's also doing the same. Every time I would try to say something, they would both interrupt me and she would just yell louder and louder. I didn't know what to do, so I started walking backwards toward my car. The other coworker, I'll call him Mark. Mark had something in his hand and I couldn't really tell what it was. Then he pulls up his hand and I see that he has a pocket knife. I was ready to poo my pants, you guys. She starts laughing at me because she can tell that I'm really scared, and he's just laughing as well. He called me a rat because I told the bosses about what she did, and she said that this needed to be fixed between her and I, no one else. I got mad and I said, "Well then why do you have Mark here with a knife?" I told her we could just talk about things, and I asked him to leave, and he said no. I tried talking some sense into them, but they just were not listening to me whatsoever. They were just so angry. Come back for part 4. Part 4. So I'm standing in the parking lot, and my coworker Leslie is yelling her face off at me, and my other coworker Mark has a knife in his hand. I'm sobbing at this point because I'm terrified. Obviously, who wouldn't be? I managed to get the car door open, and I slid inside really quick. I closed the door behind me, and then she started banging on the window, and she told me to come out. I didn't. I turned on my car, and I sped away. I called my bosses right away, and I was like, look, this just happened. Check your security cameras. They checked the security camera, and they saw the whole thing. They said they were in shock, that they didn't know that she was capable of such a thing, and that they didn't even think that it would occur to her to get someone else involved with a knife. But guess what? They didn't fire her. They told me to go back to the restaurant so that she could apologize to me because they were afraid that I was going to press charges and that the hookah lounge would suffer. And I went back to the hookah lounge because I didn't want to lose my job, and I thought, you know what, I'll just accept her apology and that'll be it. She was begging me for forgiveness. She cried, and she told me that she wishes she never said anything to me and that she thought I was very pretty and that she apologized for getting Mark involved. Mark didn't say anything to me, and he didn't get fired. Neither of them did. I quit. Story time of when I was almost trafficked in Morocco. My last story time got over 1 million views. That is insane. So I'm going to share with you guys some more story times. These are cautionary tales, so listen up. Back in 2018, my husband and I went to Egypt and Morocco. We had spent about 2 weeks in Egypt, and during that time, I had been completely covered up. I did not show any skin at all, and I knew that I definitely didn't want to do that. I didn't want to offend anyone. I also covered my hair when we were in mosques and certain places. We went to Marrakesh, and we stayed at a beautiful hotel called La Sultana, and this was a time that I just wanted to chill. I just wanted to enjoy the hotel, but my husband insisted on going out shopping and like doing touristy things, so we went to the market the first night we got there. It was already a little bit dark, and as we were walking to the market, I noticed a man kept looking at us and following us, and I'm very aware of my surroundings, so I kept looking back, and he was always there. As we got closer to the market, he was still behind us and looking. Come back for part 2 of almost getting trafficked in Morocco. So we're at the market, and this man keeps staring at us and is like 2 steps behind us. I'm totally aware. My husband isn't. He's not paranoid about these things at all because he's a man. I'm a woman. He just doesn't care. So I tell him, you know what, let's just take a cab back to the hotel. This way he doesn't follow us back to the hotel. My husband says, okay. I wave down a cab. We get into the cab, and this man just stares at us really hard as we drive away in the cab. And I tell my husband, are you looking? And he's like, yeah, you're right. I think he might be looking at us. My husband isn't worried at this point at all. We end up going back to the hotel. We have a great night. And then the next morning I wake up and I get my period. So I think I need to go buy some pills. And across the street, there was this little shop, and the lobby at the hotel said, we can go get it for you. And I said, no, it's totally fine. I will go. My husband was at the pool, so I decided to go by myself. And guess who I see when I get to the pharmacy? It's the same guy. Come back for part 3. Part 3 of almost getting trafficked in Morocco. So I'm inside the pharmacy, I spot the guy, and as I exit, he grabs my arm and he says, you're my friend, come with me. A car pulls up, they open the door, and he's to my right. And I'm thinking, what in the world? I was petrified, and I kept pulling my arm back. I just kept saying no, but he was like blocking my way. Then I turn to my left and I hear someone yell something, like in a different language, and I say to myself, this is either someone trying to help me or trying to get me into the car. So I pushed past that person, and then I feel someone yank the hair out of my scalp. Like I'm running, and like they were clearly trying to hold me back by my hair, and I run past by them. I go to the hotel, I tell a receptionist, and she explains to me that at that time there was people disappearing, tourists, and they thought it could be linked to human trafficking, and for me not to go outside by myself after that. Of course I didn't. I was super Here's a story time about when I got sexually harassed by a famous showrunner in Hollywood. I find it extremely important to share these story times because I want to avoid this from happening to anyone else, and of course I just want to get the story out there so that people can become more educated and aware. I think it's atrocious what's happening in Hollywood, and I just want to do my part. Please like and share this. I want as many people as possible to see this, and I think it's finally time for me to speak up. It was 2016, I was living by myself in Los Angeles, and I was lucky enough to work as an actress. One day I was walking down Melrose Avenue, and I heard a man's voice yell out, hey, hey, right behind me, and I turn around, and right beside me is this strange man, and he says, hey, are you an actress or a model? I replied saying, yes, why? He said, I'd like to have a photo shoot with you. He He pulled out his phone and Googled his name because he really wanted me to see how important he was in Hollywood. He insisted about 10 times that I give him my phone number, and because I just didn't have a good feeling about him, I gave him my email address instead. For the next couple of weeks, Part 2. For the next 2 weeks, he would email me almost every single day asking me when I would want to shoot. The fact that he was chasing me so much really turned me off, and I had no desire to shoot with him at all. I was honest with him though, and I said, look, your behavior is kind of odd, so I don't think I'm going to be able to shoot with you. He kept swearing up and down that he didn't have any bad intentions, and he sent me his website so that I could take a look at his past work, and I saw on his website that he had shot with many other models and actresses, so I thought to contact one of them. I messaged one on Instagram, but she did not get back to me. Finally, I gave him my phone number just to see what kind of vibe I would get off of text. He messages me and starts begging to set up a photo shoot. Again, this turned me off. I didn't have a good feeling. I mentioned it to my best friend and she was like, don't worry, just set up the photo shoot and I'll go with you. This might be a good opportunity since he's a showrunner and maybe the pictures will come out good. We set up the photo shoot and it had been about a month since we first met. That weekend, my friend and I go to his house for the photo shoot. Thank God I did not go by myself. This is where it gets disturbing. Part 3 is up. Part 3. We show up to his beautiful house with 2 Teslas in the driveway. He tells my friend to go to his office because she brought her laptop so she could do some work. We go to the backyard and we start taking some pictures. We started with headshots, nothing crazy. We shot for a total of 1 minute before he started asking me weird questions. Do you have a boyfriend? Are you married? Do you live by yourself? I answered these questions thinking it was weird, but I just said, it's okay, relax. Then he asked if I masturbated and if I fucked people. I told him to stop taking pictures and he said, why are you overreacting? What's the matter with you? I was just trying to get to know you. This is what I do with my models. Of course, he was trying to put it on me like I was the weird one. I went to my best friend and I said, we're leaving right now, and she said, what happened? Tell me now. I told her everything he had just asked me and she said, yeah, let's go. I asked him for the SD card, but he said it was his private property and I couldn't touch it. On the way back to my apartment, I felt violated. I was crying and hyperventilating. My best friend was there with me the whole time. I appreciate her so much. I call my manager and I tell him what happened and he said, well, we can't do anything against this guy. You don't want to get blacklisted. Story time about how I'm still in love with my toxic ex. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. This is really complicated, but please hear me out before you start judging me in the comments. Ex and I dated for exactly 1 year. When we first met, he was super charming, cute. I mean, he was like the perfect boyfriend. My family loved him, but gradually he started changing. The more serious we got about the relationship, the worse he became. For example, at the beginning of our relationship, we always used to hang out with our friends. And sometimes I would hang out with my own friends on my own. But 2 months into the relationship, he began guilting me. He would tell me that I would rather hang out with my friends, which wasn't even true, and then I would end up staying home and then he would go out with his friends. He would also tell my parents sometimes that I needed to be taught lessons, like how to respect men and stuff. My parents detested him. One time he came over for Thanksgiving and basically told me that I needed to go change my clothes. He even said that I looked like a whore in front of my cousin. After that, my cousin really hated him and began doing her own research. She found that he was liking girls' pictures on Instagram and that he was leaving dirty comments on their pictures. Once she found all this information, she told me and I confronted him. He told me that he had every right to comment on anyone's pictures because it was just the internet and it wasn't real life. I kind of had to accept what he said because I didn't want any more problems. I asked my cousin to stop searching stuff, but she just didn't let up. Almost every single week, she would send me screenshots of things that he'd comment on girls' pictures. Finally, I told my boyfriend that my cousin had found all this out, and he basically forced me to cut her out of my life. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would I stay with him? But when things were good, they were really good. He was super loving, affectionate. He always wanted to be with me, and he always prioritized going on dates and having fun. He would always surprise me with fun things. One time he planned this beautiful picnic and we even stayed in the park and spent the night there. But then he would manage to ruin everything by becoming really jealous and controlling. My dream job was to work in marketing, and I just happened to land this internship at a really popular fashion magazine. When I told him I got the job, he acted really strange. He didn't even congratulate me. A few hours later, he told me that I was trying too hard and that he didn't want a girlfriend that was going to be at work all the time. He also asked me how much I was going to be getting paid because he wanted to make sure it was less than what he earned. So in other words, he was jealous and envious at the same time. Then he insisted that I work around his schedule, so I could only work the days that he was working. Then he told me that if I wasn't spending enough time with him because of my new job, he would break up with me. I took that as the last straw. It was my dream job, but he was making everything terrible. While my entire family was so happy for me, I was crying in bed at night. The next morning, I woke up and texted him and told him that I didn't want to see him. He ran straight to my house. We got in his car to talk, and I proceeded to tell him everything I thought. Then he turned it all around and told me that I wasn't the girl that he fell in love with, and that if I didn't change, he would break up with me. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I'm still in love with my extremely toxic ex. After I told him that I needed him to change, he basically turned everything around and told me that I wasn't the girl that he fell in love with anymore, and that I was the one that needed to change if I wanted to continue in the relationship. And to top it all off, he kicked me out of his car. We didn't speak for about 2 weeks. During that time, I started at my dream job and everything was actually going pretty well. I didn't have the pressure on top of me about him not wanting me to work, and my life was actually getting better. My skin started clearing up and I even started losing weight. In other words, I was really happy. My parents and family were so happy too. But then I see that he starts posting other girls on his Instagram. I knew that he was doing it on purpose, so I tried not to get upset, but I just couldn't help it. Then I made a huge mistake. I messaged him and asked him if he still loved me. Then he called me and we talked on the phone for about 4 hours. By the end of the phone call, we were back together. And guess what? We even agreed to moving in together. I made him promise that he wouldn't be jealous anymore and that he would stop trying to control everything I did. He promised up and down that he would never be that way again. But literally 3 days later, he comes over super drunk, demanding you know what. I said no because my parents were home and I wasn't going to do that in the house with them. Then of course he starts threatening me again, saying that if I don't do it, I don't love him and blah blah blah. So I took advantage and I kicked him out of the house. Then he sent me an essay of a text message breaking up with me and telling me how he doesn't love me anymore. It's been 2 months since that happened. Once again, I'm doing great at work. My family and I are super happy, but I actually miss him. Not only do I miss him, I'm so jealous all the time because I see he's posting girls on his Instagram. I miss being with him and I miss having fun with him, but I don't miss always feeling scared and nervous. I even tried dating a few guys, but nobody compares to him. A few weeks ago, I went on a date with this really nice guy. We connected and went on a few more dates. I posted on my story that I was on a date and my ex went crazy. He actually showed up at the restaurant and told me to come out and talk to him. And I did. I literally left the guy that I was on a date with to go speak to my ex. He told me to leave with him and I said no. He grabbed my purse and threw it on the ground and told me that he would never speak to me again. 3 days later, he was back in my messages begging to see me. But the guy that I was on a date with actually really likes me and asked me to be his girlfriend. I don't know what to do. I love my ex and I want to get back with him, but I know he's crazy. But this new guy's really nice and really caring. What do I do?